Hey everyone, and welcome back to the X-Ring. On today's episode, what we're going to do is review the Burris XTR. This has the SCR MOA reticle, and it has MOA adjustments. Now, this was one of the scopes that myself and Bryson had won each at the Bushnell Extreme, or the Bushnell Elite. Bryson ended up with the MOA scope. He has no use for it, so I ended up purchasing it from him. The one I had has the mill reticle and mill adjustments, and that's something that I could use all the time, but I can actually use this as well, especially in the schools. If someone were to rent a rifle, at least they've got something they're accustomed to with the MOAs. So the good thing about Burris, and big shout out to them for providing these on the prize table, is very similar to Vortex. They have a forever warranty, no questions asked. This does use Philippine glass. It does not come from Japan. On the XTR II, I believe there's an XTR III as well. It does have their version of a zero stop. And on the platform today, what we're going to be using is the one that you guys have seen in the videos before. It is a Stiller action, the Spectre. It does have a Bartlein barrel. This is in 6.5 Creedmoor. It's 24 inches long, and it does have the Team Area 419 brake. I think it's called the Hellfire. Very, very good brake. It also has the Area 419 Arca Swiss rail with the Atlas. This is the BT10 because the leg swivel. Bipod with the Area 419 barricade and Arca Swiss attachment for that. This is a great shooting rifle. It is kind of the rifle that we use to review optics with because I know it shoots sub-MOA all the time. No, it's not a quarter-minute gun, but it's a good rifle. So we're going to be topping it off with the Night Force ring. So the first thing you want to do, and I don't know if you guys want to get in a little closer on this, but basically, whenever I'm installing the rings, I locate them on the 1913 rail, and then what we'll do is, of course, we'll slide it forwards. Once we slide it forwards, on the Night Force, I'm using the Borka tools. This is the 100 inch-pounds PTL, or the Precision Torque Limiter. So it is 100 on these. So there's the first one. Once again, I'm going to take the rear. I'm going to check, slide it forwards, and we'll torque this one down to 100 inch-pounds as well. Once it slips over, we know that it's torqued to 100. We've got a good solid base there. Now what we're going to do, not base, but they're rings, but base as in base as a platform. This already has 20 minutes of angle machined into the action itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the top caps off, we'll open up the scope, we'll place it in here, and we'll see how it does on paper. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and open the box up. We'll see what's in here, and we'll do a full review of it. Okay, so in taking the packaging off, we're just going to slide this box up, the top cover, the top box. And everything is packaged in here nice and tidy. It does have the sunshade. It is packaged well. Everything has the good foam around it, and it has the Burris Forever warranty. You do have your owner's manual, as well as a battery, and an Allen key with a lens cleaning cloth, as well as a rifle scope user guide. Now guys, these are important to show you what your reticle looks like and exactly what it's doing for you out in the field as far as what your holds are or would be, or what your steady lines mean. So I'm going to go ahead and take this off. Another nice touch is it does come with caps with the Burris logo on here. Instead of having to source those as well, I'm going to let you guys look up close at the turrets. I know the lighting might be bad. Let me go ahead and flip this camera around. So looking at it up close, what we've got is we have our parallax adjustment, we have illumination. I don't think we're going to mess with putting the battery in it or anything like that. You guys are going to see right there it says made in the Philippines. There's your MOAs and your windage. It does look like a pretty heavy duty scope. I know a lot of guys in PRS shoot this optic for whatever reason. This is the 5-25 by 50. As far as how everything feels pretty nice. It's not too hard to move. Let me go ahead and turn around and go ahead and mount this on the scope, on the rifle. All right, so setting it up on the rifle, we want to make sure that fore and aft is set up good for us. Typically, I like my rifles my scopes to be a little further forwards. I like a longer length of pull, but never get too close here in this area. Make sure you leave a gap there. Here I've got at least of an 1/8 inch gap, and then what I'm going to do is go ahead and place my caps on, my top caps. Once I place my top caps on, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of balance them out left and right. And this will help secure it in place because we're doing this out in the field. It's not like we're doing it in a clean shop or anything. I will worry about leveling the scope and all of that later on, but right now I just want to secure it so it won't get knocked off of the rifle itself. All right, so once my caps are on, I'm just going to eyeball getting this thing level at the moment. And then now what I'm going to do is make sure that my spacing is good left and right on the caps. I want to make sure that I don't bottom one out. So what we're trying to look at is this side over here. We're trying to look at that gap that's here and here. Make sure they're equalized, okay? So I'm going to give you an example of what's wrong. And what a lot of people do is they will bottom one side out completely. You see that? There is no gap, no slit. That would be wrong. We don't want to do that. We want to balance these out. And the way I do that is I just use one set of screws, typically the middle screws. And you can use feeler gauges. We've talked about this before. But all I'm trying to do is equalize all of this. So I'm going to loosen a little bit. I'll tighten here. And then now we're looking pretty darn equalized. I'll do the same thing on the rear rings as well. And then what I'm going to do is look through it. As long as you're using a high quality set of rings, you're typically not going to have to lap anything. Those days, I'm not going to say they're gone, but using high quality optics and rings, you won't see issues like you used to see in the past. All right, so that looks pretty good. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to eyeball check it for level, because right now, based on the way I'm seeing it, it looks good enough to me. I would say it's probably within a degree. I could be wrong, but if we put a level on it, I'm sure it'd be pretty darn close. So on your top caps, for most of your rings, you never want to exceed 20, especially when you've got 6 like this. When you have 6 screws, you're exerting a lot of force onto the scope tube itself. This is a 34 millimeter tube. So what I'm going to do is do about 15 to 18 inch-pounds. That's very important to make sure you use the manufacturer's recommendation on them, okay? Some of them will go as high as 20, 22, something like that, but I'd never go much more than about 20. 20 should be sufficient. So now that I've got that set, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to chase it. I'll use my Borka tool. I'm going to set everything on 15 inch-pounds. So on the Borka tool, what I do is I grab 15 here, get it to 15, quarter turn, insert my Torx, and then now I'm just going to work it. So I'll go center, center. And all I'm doing right now is kind of pre-torquing. So I'm not even getting close to 10 right now. All I'm doing is just kind of equalizing all of these out, because as you pull one side down, it's going to pull the other side. So, or the adjacent screw to it. So I'm just getting it close, so about 10 inch-pounds, and then I'll do the rest with the actual torque driver itself. So that's pretty close. So now what I'm going to do is tighten, tighten. I'm going to stay with it because I'm getting a little close. So now what I can do is I'm going to go 15, 15. The X pattern like we talked about, like lug nuts on a wheel. Now by doing these other ones, it will loosen up the center ones. So you need to go back and chase those again. Typically I'll go back to the rear first, but just to show you guys, see that? See how much it loosened up? So you're going to have to chase this for a little while until you get everything equalized. So we're starting on this one from the beginning, getting close, 15, 15, X pattern, I do not use any type of thread locker, especially on one that has 6 clamp screws. If you're going to do that, then I'd reduce your torque down by about, a good rule of thumb, maybe 15% or so, because it's going to add more lubricity to those threads, and you can easily over torque if you're going to use something like blue Loctite. I think in Machinist World they use like 20% as a reduction. Okay, so these aren't moving at all. So these right here have equalized out pretty well. We're getting a little bit of movement on the outer. So we are going to have to chase it once again because that will affect the middle. And of course it did. So yeah, this is the most tedious part of putting everything on, but everything looks equalized pretty well. Everything seems to be lining up pretty well. Let's go back to the rear. Centers are good. Outer X. Whoops. We're getting really close now because I'm getting just the slightest bit of movement. We'll go back to the center. This should be pretty good. All right, that's it. Always finish out. Don't ever stop halfway. Whatever you started on, make sure you finish all the screws leading up to that. So now this is good. Now you guys might say, well, one of the things you didn't do was check your length of pull. I know this rifle well enough and know what my length of pull is, but what I would recommend when you're setting it in here for your distance fore and aft, put it on your maximum power, shoulder it, and you should be pretty nice right there. See, for me, like I said, I like it a little more forwards. I could actually deal with it a little more forwards, but I really don't want to start chasing this bell right in here. So the next thing we want to do is we're going to put it on max power. We're going to adjust our parallax for infinity. Now what I'm going to do is, looking up at blue sky, never at the sun, I'm going to shoulder it, and my reticle should be crystal clear. This is when I will actually use the focus on the backside to make sure my reticle is crisp and sharp, and it's going to be about right in there. And that's going to be perfect for me. The last thing I need to adjust is my cheek riser, this one right here. I didn't lock it down. What I do there is, right now I'm above the line of sight of the scope. So I will start lowering it until I get a good spot weld, and it just naturally fits. So it naturally fits there. So now I will take my bit. I'm going to torque this down on this clamping screw. Make sure nothing moves. So we are pretty solid right there. Now, I know my first shot is not going to hit the paper, okay? I am going to have to parallel bore sight it. I'm going to have to pull the bolt, which means I'm probably going to have to drop this back down again, and then I'm just going to visually inspect it to see if we can get around on paper. So that's what I'm going to do now. But I've got to be able to see through the bore, and I can't do that with this up. So once again, I was afraid of this. What I will have to do is lower this down like this. Put something solid in here, and I'm looking for that white target through the muzzle. Okay, so I have the white target, and I want to make sure I don't move here. And what I'm going to do is just lift my head like that little groundhog. Turn my power down just a little, adjust my infinity to about 100. So through the muzzle, pop my head up, and my crosshairs are to the right of the steel. So you would think you need to move the target left, or the reticle left, but you don't. You move it to the right even more. So I'm going to move it about 4 mils based on what I'm seeing. It's close, or excuse me, MOA. This is an MOA. So here we go. A little more, and we're going to go okay, so right here should get me on paper. I should be pretty darn close. I've got it set where it's a little bit high. We'll see what happens, but now we're ready for our first shot. Now guys, out of the box, something that I will tell you that is quite common with the Burris XTR scopes is that when you mount it up, you might not have enough downward adjustment. And what you're going to need to do is loosen the 2 cap screws and lift up on the cap, because that's how their zero stop is set. We had a couple people in the class that I taught a couple weeks ago that thought that they were out of adjustment in the optic itself, and it was not. They just got to give themselves a little more room on the zero stop itself. So we haven't fired this yet. Like I said, we just mounted it up. We made some rudimentary adjustments by me looking through there. We're going to see where this first round goes. And hopefully, I do have the safety on. hopefully it is on the paper so that we can see it. All right, last thing I want to do, oh, I'm missing my tool. Did somebody move that tool? Okay, so I'm going to adjust my spot weld again, or my cheek weld, so that it's about right. I'm going to go ahead and tighten this up so that it doesn't slip on me. Oh yeah, that feels perfect. All right, so first shot. I will tell you the glass is, I mean, right off the bat, after coming off of my Night Force, the glass is a little more milky than I like. It's not bad, but it's definitely not Night Force. Okay, so we want to adjust our parallax. This isn't even in the same line as like a Vortex razor. I will wipe it off here in just a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to aim in between the bottom 4 targets. I'm going to aim dead center. There's a bullet hole there where Rick had shot a moment ago. Here we go. Okay, I am literally 1 inch to the left of that where I was aiming. So if it's an MOA scope, we're just going to do 4 clicks to the right if it's a 1/4 minute adjustment. So we're going to go to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4. And as far as elevation, we are pretty darn close. I think that's good. So what I'm going to do now is, before I zero my turrets out, I'm going to go ahead and do a 3-shot group at 100 yards, and I will aim at the bottom left bullseye. What we get is what we get. That is pretty much cutting the bullseye at 4 o'clock. The exact same hole. And I am out of ammo. But wait, there's more. It's still in the bull, but it's a little off to the side. I figure with all the movement that might happen. Okay, so everything's in the bullseye centered up. I'm a little disappointed in the glass. The glass clarity is not the greatest. I don't know how much it was packaged up or how long it's been sitting. So let me take the lens cloth, wipe it, because it's definitely a lot more milky than I'm used to. So maybe it was just from the packaging. We'll go ahead and clean that lens. You know, it's a little better, but it's still not great. It's nothing to write home about. So my elevation is perfect because I had set the turret for that. I'm off just a hair, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to check this for tracking. I'm not going to do a tall target test. If you guys want to know what that is, there's plenty of videos about that on doing a tall target test. So I'm resetting my turrets to 0, 0, windage and elevation. So coming from the bottom left, which is where I just shot, and everything was in the white, if I come up to here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's 10 inches, or approximately 10 minutes of angle at 100 yards. So what I want to do is I'm going to move this around. I want to get plenty of play in it. I'm at 0. Now I'm going to go to 10 minutes of angle. Now remember, it's 1.04 inches and we're doing 10 minutes. It's not going to add up to a whole lot, but of course you know it's going to be 10.4. Okay, so about 10 and a half roughly. So I am estimating that my next shot should be about right here, just a little high of center. Let's see what happens. There are no impacts in the top left. We're aiming at the bottom left. It is dead center bullseye here, okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it over to the right. How many minutes is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if I go 5 minutes right, it should put it in this one. So let's go 5 minutes right. And here we go. Okay, so it's a little out, but it's just off the edge in the green, but it's still almost dead centered. So it did move it over a hair further than what we anticipated, but what we're gonna do now is we're gonna go 10 minutes down. We're still gonna aim here. Okay, we are way off now. Now we're down into this area. So now what we're gonna do is go back to 0, 0. Everything's zeroed out. And it's a hair low left, which is what we had seen. So I'm getting a little bit of tracking error with the scope. It's not bad, but it is tracking error. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna spin this around again. And I'm spinning it a lot. I'm gonna spin my windage back on 0. We'll tap it a couple times for good measure. Now I'm gonna aim for the right one. And once again, it's at 7 o'clock, cutting the white. So based on that, I'm going to need to go left 2. Or a half minute of angle, because we're at 100 yards. So if I do that, now let's go ahead and check and see if we get a dead center bullseye. I'm going to go ahead and zoom up. Guys, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm slightly disappointed in this glass. We're going to still continue to shoot at this same one. And now it's in the white at 11 o'clock. So it tracks well. Value is not bad because you can get these scopes for about $1,000. I think MSRP is around $1,200. I think it'll suit most everyone's needs. It's going to be better or higher end than, let's say, like a Viper PST. It's not going to be something like a Razor HD quality glass. I can tell you the clarity in that is a ton better than this. But this is an entry-level scope, or more of an entry-level scope. I know a lot of you guys are saying, geez, $1,000 entry-level. Well, when it's sitting on top of a $5,000 rifle or a $4,500 build that's a custom build, this rifle deserves better glass than this. No knock on Burris, because they do make higher end stuff, but the glass is a little milky for what I like. In low light situations, I can tell you right now, this is not going to gather as much light as what we're used to. But I hope you enjoyed that review of the Burris XTR II. Like I said, nothing on them. Let's go ahead and take a look at the targets and you'll see how it did. Okay, so this right here is from where Rick was shooting earlier when he was trying to get his rifle dialed in. So he had a pasty here. That pasty's now gone. He also had a pasty here. It is gone. That's one of his shots as well. So what I did was, when I put the rifle on, the very first shot that I did, I was aiming at that bullet hole. Now remember, I just parallel bore sighted it. And the very first shot was here, which was 1 inch to the left. So I came to the right 4 clicks, or 1 inch to the right, and it was here. So I went ahead and did a group. So that group told me that the rifle was zeroed enough for a 3-shot group. We talked you guys through it. What I did then was I went up 10 minutes. It was good. I told you it was in the bullseye. Then we went to the right 5 minutes, and it shifted over a little too far. So I've got a little bit of error there. Then I came down 10 minutes. It shifted even more because this was just magnified as we came down because it was right of center. And then what I did then is I went back to 0, but then I aimed here. Once I aimed and shot dead center, it was still low right. So we had a little bit of tracking error. And then what I did was I spun the turrets a lot, aimed center. It hit here at 7, and that's nothing like this group here. So then I came up, or I came left 2/10 of an, or a half of an MOA, and that's where we're at right here. So we're getting a little bit of vertical dispersion, a little bit of movement, but all in all, it's not bad. Once you get it zeroed, I think it's fine, but that's what you're getting for with the higher end scopes, like those Vortex Razors or the Night Force or the Schmidt & Benders. So hopefully you learned a little bit. This is not really the way to do it. Typically you want a really, really tall target, and you're gonna measure it out, and you're gonna come up almost 3 feet or so, sometimes 4 feet, 5 feet, and then you can really see these errors start to magnify. But this is good enough for most scopes. I've seen some perform a lot worse. The next scope I'm going to review is one by Primary Arms. It is the 6-30, I believe it is, the Platinum. Big shout out to Primary Arms for providing that for the testing, and I will do the same type thing with that, and I'll mount it on the same rifle. So guys, like, share, and subscribe. Hope you enjoyed that. Hopefully you learned a little bit of something, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a good one.